Chapter 9. Intensive Care. The terminal was back by the lifts, a wall-mounted screen secluded at the far end of an antechamber outside Ward 26, well away from the prying eyes of patients and cat nurses. This meant there was no one else around to see the doctor negotiate his way into the hospital's computer systems for a closer peek at the mainframe. With Rose keeping lookout next to him, he scrolled through a dozen different schematics of the hospital tower, bullying his way into menus and sparring with several annotated listings. It was a bit nice, this tech. Already he was beginning to find his way around. With the sonic screwdriver as backup, any firewalls or security measures wouldn't be too much of a problem. No, nothing odd. He was a little bit disappointed, even after scanning the terminal display for a second, then a third time. Surgery, post-op, nano-dentistry, still no sign of a shop. They should really have a shop. No, it's missing something else, Rose muttered, and nudged him impatiently out of the way so she could search the screen herself, all faculties engaged. There hadn't been any mention of her sudden, breathless, and very public outburst of affection towards him just a few moments ago. The doctor supposed that was fine. That way, he and Rose could both carry on pretending it had never even happened. Easier, really, to pretend. To act like those looks and smiles between them weren't anything special. They were good at that. Thankfully, the doctor had recovered from the ordeal with relative speed and grace, if he did say so himself, and Rose seemed quite happy to keep her hands, and her lips, to herself afterwards. She was straight to business now anyway, her face all hard angles in the glare of the screen as she searched and scoured, on a mission. The doctor studied her out of the corner of his eye, trying to read her, finding he couldn't. Rose Tyler was a mystery to him sometimes. Always had been, really. There were days when he thought he knew her inside out, and other days like today, when he felt as if he didn't know her at all. She licked her lips as she browsed, something he'd never seen her do. Was this just her poking fun again, or was she actually trying to bait him into something? Maybe it was all payback for the disinfectant earlier. Yeah, that would certainly explain the phony come-ons and rather immodest way Rose had adjusted her top. She wasn't exactly being very subtle with the buttons. All of this seemed to be leading somewhere hopeful and exciting, but then the doctor's theory deflated again. So why kiss him? Why act now as though she hadn't? Why behave like it was completely normal to just ambush him like that with her exuberant lips and then go about her day as if their entire universe hadn't just been shaken to its core? Not that it had been unpleasant, of course, being kissed by Rose. On the contrary, had the initial shock actually worn off, the doctor might have even admitted he'd found it rather enjoyable. Very, very enjoyable, in fact, with extra special lashings of very on top. But here? Now? It was all so sudden, so soon, and it hadn't happened since that day on Satellite 5, the kiss that had saved the universe. The day Rose had looked into the heart of the TARDIS, the day she'd saved him from the Daleks, the day she'd held sway over the whole of time and space, with the raw power of the vortex running through her head, becoming a goddess of golden fire, burning more brightly than 1,000 stars. The doctor's previous self had given up his life that day to save her own. All it had taken was a gentle press of his lips to hers, so he could draw the time energy out of her and absorb it into himself, letting it rip through him like a storm. It had been like swallowing a sun. Okay, yeah, it had been unconventional. Mercifully, Rose couldn't remember too much of it afterwards. I sang a song and the Daleks ran away, the doctor had joked, once they were both back in the TARDIS. Like it had all been a dream. And then he changed his face, right in front of her, and there hadn't been much time for them to dwell on the whole thing. Not when Rose was so busy coming to terms with the new him. Whether he would ever work up the nerve to tell her what really happened, the doctor didn't know, and wasn't sure if he wanted to. So, this then. Was there going to be a lot of this in the future? Maybe he'd got it wrong. Maybe Rose did actually remember after all, and bringing up this bit of unfinished business between them was her own belated and belligerent and very, very human way of saying thanks? Of telling him, yes, don't worry, she really did see him for who he was? New doctor and all? Or was it the promise of something more? Was that even a good thing? Come on. The doctor gave himself a shake. Focus. Stop being distracted. He would ask her about it later. Much later. When I was downstairs, those nurse-cat nuns were talking about intensive care, Rose was saying. But where is it? She was still talking funny, doing that silly accent again with a lilt of arrogance in her voice. Posh Rose was beginning to grate on him a bit. But the doctor was pleased with her sleuthing. Rose had a remarkable knack of picking up on things he didn't, usually because they were too domestic for him to notice. He glanced at where she'd pointed on the screen and gave her a smile. You're right, well done. Rose ignored his praise. Why would they hide a whole department, though? She murmured, more to herself than the doctor. It's got to be there somewhere. Search the subframe. She didn't see how the doctor tightened at that, nor how briefly his eyes darkened as he pulled out the sonic screwdriver to follow her suggestion. It wasn't just the brusque tone she'd used to tell him, demand of him really. It was also that she knew precisely what to look for. When it came to advanced alien tech, Rose was usually content to bow out and let the doctor handle things. These medical computer systems were billions of years ahead of her own time. Since when did she have any idea what a subframe was? What if the subframe's locked? He asked. A test, ever so casual. Rose rolled her eyes. Then try the installation protocol, she said snappishly, enunciating every syllable as if it were obvious. Right, because Rose knew what that was too. A curious thought was bouncing around the doctor's head. She'd learned a lot travelling with him. Maybe, okay, he was being generous now, she'd actually learned a bit more than he'd previously thought? Yeah, of course, he nodded tersely and whirred the sonic into action. Whatever it was, best not to worry her with it now. Sorry, installation protocol. Hold on. Not a moment later, there was a deep, reverberating thrum and the thin hiss of hydraulics somewhere beneath their feet. The doctor and Rose stumbled back as, rather incredibly, the entire wall in front of them simply sank down into the floor to reveal a darkened corridor beyond, its grim metal walls blemishing the hospital's stark, seamless white. Talk about a secret door. Intensive care, I suppose, the doctor murmured. He glanced at Rose and caught an excited gleam in her eyes which hadn't been there before. It looked uncannily like triumph. Well, he asked her, intensive enough for you? Rose gave him a smile. The wrong sort of smile. I suppose it'll have to do. And squaring her shoulders, she strode straight through the opening without a care in the world. She didn't even look back. A bit spooked, the doctor watched her go. Certainly looks intensive, he muttered, before picking up the pace and following her into the dark. And as they left the hospital behind and entered its mysterious shadow, neither he nor Rose noticed the white, whiskered habit of a cat nurse watching quietly from afar. In such darkness, the harsh green glow up ahead came as a surprise. Damp, cold air settled into the doctor's throat like a thin film of grease as Rose led him assertively onward down the passageway. It was cramped inside. There would be little chance of fitting a bed down here. made even smaller by the clusters of exposed piping that hissed alongside left and right. The walls themselves appeared to have been a shiny white once upon a time, but they were grey now, gathering dust. And again that same antiseptic hospital smell, which only seemed to grow stronger as the pair of them ventured deeper into the gloom, filling up the entire space like someone had tried to purge the world of fragrance. Like the place itself was sickening for something. A couple more turns and one dead end. The doctor caught up with Rose just as she rounded a corner and came to a rickety metal staircase which slanted downwards into a deep, cavernous well of a room, octagonal in shape, descending hundreds of feet down into the dark. Down, 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 seemingly without end. That the chamber could ever have been hidden at all was hard to believe. It was massive in every direction, their balconied floor just one of many, each with its own walkway. The glow, the doctor realized, was coming from dozens of grimy glass doors, all shining a sickly green out of the industrial walls, high overhead and right down into the very bowels of the building. He climbed down in silence after Rose, the two of them navigating the many stairs and walkways that looped around the chamber's edge. The steep metal steps creaked ominously under their feet, but they paid them no mind. They were far too busy looking at everything else. The sheer scale of the place was astonishing, so jarringly removed from the bright, shiny wards in the hospital above. The chilly air felt clean, but impossibly so. And all around them, the eerie green pods. Rows and rows and rows of them, like the unopened doors of some giant advent calendar. The doctor was distantly reminded of some ice tombs he'd once discovered in his youth, back when he was obsessed with playing the recorder. Rose flounced on ahead with purpose. On, never stopping, not even pausing to look round as she excitedly led the way down onto one of the metal gantries, passing green door after green door. Rattled, the doctor trailed slowly behind. Neither of them had spoken since the terminal, but that unusual look he'd caught from Rose, her eyes glistening like blades, was screwing itself deeper and deeper into the doctor's head until there was no getting rid of it. She was saying all the wrong words, doing all the wrong things. She was even moving wrong, every striding step so, well, confident wasn't really the right word, was it? No. Practiced. The doctor forced himself to take a breath. Okay, he would need to tread carefully here. If Rose wasn't herself, if something was affecting her mind, some alien parasite or a nasty superbug she'd picked up in the hospital, then it could just as easily snap at any moment, taking Rose with it. He couldn't let her out of his sight for a second. After a while, she stopped. Behind her, the doctor stopped too. There didn't seem to be any point in them going any further. Beyond the gantries, the chamber's hollow centre appeared to descend almost infinitely, an endless, bottomless void, carving straight through the entire building, deep underground, probably beneath the bay of New York itself. Joining Rose at the railing, he peered over the side and saw more doors. Up and down, above and below, stacked as far as the eye could see, level upon level upon level upon level, all glowing, all green, all occupied. The doctor felt his heart clench. The pods were made out of some kind of frosted exoglass, fastened with chunky automated locks that ensured only the nurses would have access to anything contained within. The encompassing chill from a variety of cooling systems overhead was uncomfortably close to a butcher's freezer, or a morgue, an impression which wasn't exactly helped by the warning sign nearby that read, danger of infection. And it was clear now that these pods weren't empty. Dark shadows lurked behind each one, identical, human-sized. Skirting around Rose, who was trying to peer through the grime of the nearest door, the doctor aimed his sonic screwdriver at the lock. A gentle sigh of decompression broke the silence, nameless gases hissing out from hidden tubes. With a shrill concert of bleeps and a solid clunk, the pod door twisted free and the doctor heaved it open. Beside him, Rose gave a dainty little cough, wafting away a haze of escaping green steam. Then she and the doctor saw inside. Slumped on a rack which braced his arms like a chair, clad in nothing but the dirty grey rags of what might have once been a hospital smock, a man wavered in the enclosure. A very, very sick man. Illness ran rampant through his body. Blisters, boils, warts, tumours, and who knew what else. Every inch of his flaking, mottled skin was sticky and leaking, with more than enough pus to spare. Gaping sores ran all the way up his nose to the corner of one bloodshot eye. A veritable roadmap of death traced right across his flesh, which was gradually peeling away to reveal the gangrenous muscle sinew beneath. The poor wretch trembled horribly as he tried to focus on the two newcomers suddenly standing before him. Scores of filthy dark tubes trailed out from his arms and legs. Dozens more were plumbed into his abdomen, feeding him fluids, nutrients, and, by the looks of it, more disease. The man's overworked immune system appeared to be fighting several infections at once. Even in this dazed, corpse-like state, he looked to be in the most unimaginable pain. But his eyes, though glassy with fever and exhaustion, were alive and scared. Rose clapped a hand over her mouth. "That's disgusting," she gasped, sounding like she was about to gag. "What's wrong with him?" The foul stench drifting out of the pod was enough to make even the doctor go pale. He didn't answer, couldn't, unable to tear his eyes away. "I'm sorry," was all he could manage, meeting the man's desolate gaze, rasping softly with him. "I'm so sorry." Words of regret which weren't much comfort at all. The doctor knew that, just as he knew he would likely go on to utter them many, many, many more times. But there was nothing else they could do. He stepped back and pressed the door shut as gently as he could. The lock sealed itself again. Swiftly, the doctor moved on to sonic open the next one, needing to see, to be sure of what he was up against, only to sag even more when he laid eyes on the body inside. This time it was a woman, who couldn't have been much older than Rose was. She looked to be in much the same appalling condition as her neighbour. Long, stringy hair against sallow cheeks, joints painfully swollen with infection, her waxy skin marred all over with some horrific form of millionth century smallpox. But there again, trapped in the woman's groggy, distant gaze, screaming silently for escape, was the spark of life. "But what disease is that?" asked Rose, sounding half repulsed, half fascinated as she pinched her nostrils shut. "All of them," the doctor said numbly, his eyes dark. "Every single disease in the galaxy. They've been infected with everything." Rose immediately recoiled. "What about us?" she said in a panicky whisper. "Are we safe?" The doctor's teeth clenched. It was the wrong question. It wasn't the question Rose would ask. "The air's sterile. Just don't touch them." He swung the door shut again and turned back to the gantry. The cavern's honeycomb of cells stretched away before him, up, down, left and right. Door after door after door after door. So many. They didn't seem to end. The doctor counted them all, both hands clenching the guardrail, his face haggard in the green glow, taking in the sheer volume of all these lives, the bodies, the suffering, feeling it weigh down upon him until he feared he might choke. Rose joined him at the railing, hugging herself as though afraid to touch the walls. "How many patients are there?" "They're not patients," the doctor said quietly. He was fighting hard to keep his voice even, grasping the railing so tightly his knuckles were turning white. Rose looked at him, brow furrowed. "But they're sick." "They were born sick." And now the doctor's voice rose to a snarl as he gave up on hiding how disgusted he was. "They're meant to be sick. They exist to be sick. Lab rats. No wonder those sisters have got a cure for everything. They've built the ultimate research laboratory. A human farm." Rose pulled a face and shuddered, but only a little, which just made the doctor angrier. So angry, in fact, that he actually wanted to throw something. But all he had with him was Rose and a sonic screwdriver, so he settled for shoving his hands back into his pockets and storming off down the gantry. He needed answers, and he needed them now. He was putting an end to this. Today. Behind him, he heard Rose quicken her pace to keep up. "Why don't they just die?" she wondered aloud. Again, no anger, no worry, just blunt, unfeeling curiosity. As if it were nothing, as if she saw this every day. Oh, how that lofty little accent was beginning to grate on his last nerve. With every word out of Rose's mouth, with every explanation he gave, the doctor's rage only grew and grew. "Plague carriers," he spat, with barely a glance at her as they stopped by another door. "The perfect incubators, always the last to go. It's for the greater cause." A new voice, gentle and sad and soft as a purring kitten, sounded from the other end of the row. The doctor and Rose whipped round. Clearly, their departure from Ward 26 hadn't been as discreet as they'd hoped. One of the sisters was stepping out of the shadows towards them, gloved paws clasped timidly in front of her, as though she were in prayer. The doctor acknowledged her softly. "Novice Hay."